My name is Marissa Elaine Carr. I'm 34 years old, and the day I crashed my car was the day I finally saw my family for who they really were. I hadn't even planned to be on the road that morning. The original plan was simple: fly back from Denver after a 3-day client conference, sleep on the plane, stumble into my apartment, let my boyfriend pick me up with coffee and bad jokes, and spend Sunday doing absolutely nothing. That was before my phone lit up with a call from my younger brother Luke the night before my flight. "Reese, I need a favor," he said, skipping hello like always. He still calls me by the childhood nickname he invented when he couldn't say Marissa. "Found this insane cabin deal for the weekend. Hot tub, game room, fire pit, the works. Me, Aaron, Michelle, couple of friends. But I gotta book it before midnight or we lose the price." He sounded breathless, excited. It was a tone I knew too well, the tone he used when he wanted something and already assumed I'd say yes. "What's the damage?" I asked, opening my laptop automatically. My fingers were already moving, muscle memory from years of bailing them out. "Like 3,100 total, but everyone's chipping in," he said quickly. "I'm just short on my card right now. You know I'll pay you back Monday." I almost laughed at that last part. The promise to pay me back had become more of a catchphrase than an intention. Still, I stared at the flight confirmation email sitting in my inbox, at the remaining balance in my account after hotel, meals, and conference expenses. It would be tight. "Luke, I've already paid for this trip," I said. "It's been a heavy month." "Come on, Reese," he pushed, turning on that wheedling charm. "You know Mom and Dad have been stressed. This trip is for them too. Family time, you know? You always say we don't do enough of that." What I always said, in reality, was that we only did family time when I funded it. But he wasn't wrong about one thing. I love them. All of them. I had spent most of my adult life proving it with my bank account. "Fine," I said finally, the word coming out with a sigh. "I'll cover it again." "Best sister ever," he crowed. "I swear I'll have it back to you Monday." Of course he would not. We both knew it. I transferred the money anyway. The problem was that once I sent it, I realized I didn't have enough left to comfortably book a last-minute flight home. I stared at the numbers for a long moment. Then I made the decision that changed everything. Driving would be cheaper. Denver to home wasn't impossible. A long night, lots of coffee, a good playlist. It would be fine. I didn't tell anyone. Not my family, not even my boyfriend Daniel, who had texted earlier, offering to cover the difference for the flight. "Don't worry, I've got it," I'd replied, lying more to myself than to him. "I'll make it work. Enjoy your weekend. Try not to miss me too much." He sent a heart and a stupid meme. I shut my laptop, packed my bag, and told myself I'd sleep when I got home. I left Denver around midnight. The highways were slick from a light snow that had melted earlier and frozen back into thin, invisible sheets. The kind of danger you don't see until it's too late. The dashboard glowed soft blue, the world beyond my headlights dissolving into darkness. My ribs ached from conference stress and too much coffee. My eyelids felt heavier with every mile. About 40 minutes from home, it happened. I hit a stretch of black ice near a curve just as a semi ahead of me lost control. The truck jackknifed across the road, its trailer swinging like a guillotine. I hit the brakes, swerved left too hard, and the tires lost grip completely. Everything turned into sound and motion and pain. The car spun. The guardrail rushed toward me, then flipped away as the car rolled. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The airbag blew into my chest like a fist. My head snapped sideways. There was the taste of metal in my mouth, a ringing in my ears so loud it felt like silence. Then nothing. When the world came back, it did so in fragments. Flashing red lights, cold air against my face, hands on my shoulders, voices above me. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Stay with us. You're lucky, okay? Just stay with us." Paramedics cut my jacket open. The night sky above me spun. I tried to ask about the truck driver, but my lips barely moved, and I never heard the answer. The stretcher rocked. Someone mentioned my phone, my emergency contacts, my family. I clung to that word, family, like a lifeline. By the time I was settled in a hospital bed, everything hurt. My ribs were cracked, my wrist fractured, my arm stitched. My whole right side felt like it had been used as a punching bag. The nurse told me I was lucky. "Could have been so much worse," she said gently. "We're going to keep you for observation a few days. Make sure nothing internal surprises us. You've got people coming?" I swallowed. "Did anyone call my family?" "The paramedics did at the scene," she said, checking the chart. Messages were left with every emergency contact listed. I stared at the white ceiling for a long time. Then I turned my head slowly and checked my phone. Battery at 12%. No missed calls, no new messages. They'd been notified. They knew. They just hadn't called. Around 9:30 a.m., after hours of nothing but beeping machines and soft-voiced nurses, my phone buzzed. Not with a call, with a social media notification. I asked him. Luke had posted. I opened the app with clumsy fingers. There they were. My brother, my sisters Erin and Michelle, my parents crammed into an SUV, holding up energy drinks and grinning at the camera like they were headed to a music festival. The caption read, "Road trip with the real crew." It had been posted less than an hour after my crash. I checked the timestamp once, twice, 3 times. I refreshed, hoping somehow it would change. It didn't. They had known I'd been in an accident. They knew I was in a hospital bed somewhere outside the city. They chose the cabin weekend anyway. They chose the trip I paid for instead of the daughter and sister lying alone, bruised and bandaged, in a trauma ward. Something inside me didn't explode. It didn't erupt into rage. It just snapped, quietly, cleanly, like a rope that had been pulled too tight for too long, finally giving way. For years, I had been the one holding everything together. I was the fallback, the helper, the fixer, the one who paid for family beach rentals, college textbooks, emergency dental work, the one who sent money for bills one week and covered a vacation the next. They always said thank you, tossed a heart emoji into group chat, but never asked how I was doing. I had stopped expecting it a long time ago. I kept giving anyway. 4 days passed in that hospital bed. 4 days of no calls, no visits, nothing from the people whose emergencies I had treated as my own for a decade. The only person who checked in consistently was Daniel, my boyfriend, who had to practically bully the nurses' station just to get confirmation I was still there. He offered to drive in, to sleep in the chair, to sit with me through the nights. I told him not to. I didn't have the energy to let him see this version of me yet. On the 4th day, as my discharge papers were being processed, and a nurse wrapped fresh tape around my ribs, my phone lit up. 41 missed calls, a Venmo request, and a text from my mother. The request was from Luke, $3,100. Cabin weekend. Everyone's chipping in, the note read, like this was some casual, shared memory instead of the trip I'd already paid for with money and blood. Under that, my mother's message. Call back. It's urgent. We can't fix this without you. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. That was the moment something finally clicked, but not in the way she meant. She wasn't calling because I had almost died. She wasn't calling because her eldest daughter had been alone in a hospital bed for days. She was calling because something had gone wrong for them. They needed me, and that was urgent. Me being broken on the side of a highway had not been. I put the phone down. I didn't respond to the Venmo request. I didn't call her back. I signed my discharge papers, confirmed to the nurse that I had no one to pick me up, ordered a rideshare, and limped out through the automatic doors with my hospital wristband still scratching my skin. By the time the car pulled away from the curb, I had made a decision. I was done being their safety net. They just didn't know it yet. The first morning back in my apartment was strangely quiet. I moved slowly, every bruise reminding me of the crash, the hospital, the unanswered calls that never came. But my mind felt clearer than it had in years. Muted, cold, focused. I sat at my kitchen table, still in the oversized sweatshirt Daniel had dropped off the day before, and made a list. Not dramatic, not emotional, just honest. Left column. Every monthly payment I made for my family. My mom's medication. My dad's half of the mortgage. Erin's graduate school loan. Michelle's car lease. Luke's temporary credit card debt that I'd been covering for almost 2 years. Subscription services, utilities, phone plans, even the Netflix password they all used but never paid for. Right column. People who checked in while I was in the hospital. 3 names. My grandmother, who called every single night once she heard. My Uncle Keith, who offered to drive across state lines to pick me up. And Brian, yes, Brian, a coworker I barely spoke to, who sent a voice note saying he'd send food if I needed anything. Not my mom, not my dad, not my sisters, not Luke. Just 3 people, 2 of whom weren't even immediate family. I stared at the list for a long time. Then I opened my banking app. One by one, I canceled everything. Every automatic payment, every quiet contribution, every recurring draft I had carried for them like a pack mule for the last decade. I removed myself from every shared plan, stopped every transfer, pulled the plug on utilities they had conveniently forgotten were in my name, canceled Michelle's gym membership, turned off the cable bill at my parents' house. No messages, no explanations, no warnings, just silence. 2 hours later, the first text came from Luke. Yo, the cabin ended up costing a little more. You probably missed the Venmo request. Just need it soon, so everyone's even. He added a laughing emoji. I left it on red. That evening, Michelle called. I ignored it. Then Aaron, then Mom, then Dad. By dinner, I had 10 missed calls and one long message from Mom asking what was going on and insisting, we've always been there for each other. The lie rang loud. I didn't answer. The next day, the inconvenience began. Michelle's car payment bounced. She sent me screenshots of the overdue notice. Hey, Reese, something's wrong with the automatic transfer. Can you fix it? I didn't respond. Then came Aaron's email. An email, not even a text. I noticed my loan payment didn't go through. Can you please reinstate it just for this month? Things have been hard. Just temporary. Temporary. Everything was temporary until it wasn't. Still, I said nothing. That was when Dad called 3 times in a row. His voicemail wasn't angry. Not yet. It sounded tired. Mortgage didn't go through. If something changed, you should have been man enough. He paused, corrected himself. Woman enough to say so. I almost laughed. He wanted a conversation now. Where was that conversation when I was lying alone in a hospital bed? They weren't calling because they were worried about me. They were calling because their comfort was disrupted. It took less than 48 hours for their panic to truly start bleeding through the cracks. Luke texted first, trying to keep it casual. Can you spot me $150 till Friday? 5 minutes later. Okay, seriously, did I do something? Just tell me. I didn't. By that evening, Aaron sent a group text. This family is falling apart. We need to talk. As if the glue holding their world together had suddenly stopped working. Michelle left a voicemail. Her tone was soft, rehearsed, like she'd practiced being reasonable. We don't know what's going on, but we love you. We're all stressed right now. Just call us, okay? We'll figure it out. Like always. Like always. Yes, we always figured it out. But by we, they meant me. I figured it out when Dad's business nearly folded. I figured it out when Erin totaled her car. I figured it out when Michelle wanted to study abroad. I figured it out when Luke couldn't keep a job long enough to pay his own bills. I was always the fix, never the person. Then the cracks widened. Mom sent a long message filled with passive guilt. I don't know why you're punishing us. This isn't how families behave. No mention of the crash. No mention of the hospital. Just the inconvenience of me changing. And then, just as I expected, money problems started landing like dominoes. Michelle's car insurance lapsed. Aaron's loan servicer called repeatedly. Dad's mortgage company began sending automatic warnings. Luke's credit card froze completely. Their messages grew more frantic, more dramatic, more manipulative. But I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I wanted revenge, though they deserve some. But because for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. And clarity hit me like another impact on black ice. They didn't need me. They needed what I gave them. For the first time ever, they were going to have to stand on their own. Or fall. By the end of the week, I stopped counting the missed calls. They were multiplying, not slowing down. Michelle called 10 times in one morning. Aaron emailed again, this time copying Dad. Luke tagged me in an old Facebook photo with the caption, "Family sticks together, even when it's hard." As if I'd abandoned them, as if I'd stopped being useful. But the part none of them realized, the part they had forgotten because I always handled it quietly, I owned the family business. Dad started it, the remodeling company that put food on our table. But I was the one who kept it alive. I negotiated the contracts, managed the books, handled the legal messes, built the operational structure, cleaned up every time Luke messed something up on the job, secured loans when Dad's credit tanked. 5 years ago, after Dad couldn't get approved for a personal loan, the LLC paperwork had been quietly transferred to me. He signed it without reading the fine print. I never used that leverage, until now. I didn't make a scene, didn't threaten, didn't announce anything. I logged into the back-end system, paused accounts payable, revoked every admin access but my own, updated the site with one simple line, operations paused under restructure. Then I emailed every supplier directly, professionally, explaining temporary delays and restructuring. By the next afternoon, the fallout hit. Dad called 7 times. Mom left a trembling voicemail. Suppliers reached out confused but respectful. Contractors forwarded me screenshots of Dad's frantic messages, some polite, some angry, some threatening. Every screenshot proved one thing. They'd built everything on me. And now they were finally feeling what life was like without me holding them up. That night, my cousin Kyle called, quiet voice, steady. "I saw what happened," he said. "Good for you, seriously." I asked how he knew. Then he told me something that changed everything. Luke had posted a video before deleting it, a clip in the car, on the way to the cabin. Aaron laughing. "Well, she's in the hospital. What are we going to do? Sit around and cry?" Laughter filled the whole car. They knew. They mocked it, and still they drove off. That wasn't neglect. That was cruelty. And when I hung up with Kyle, I understood something deeper than anger. The family I had been protecting all these years had never protected me at all. The shockwaves from freezing the company sank in faster than I expected. Not loud, not explosive, more like watching a structure quietly lose its support beams. At first, my family assumed it was a glitch, a password error, a server hiccup, something they could fix with frantic calls and stubborn insistence. But as the hours passed, the reality became unavoidable. I had been the backbone they never bothered to strengthen. Contractors I'd worked with for years forwarded me Dad's messages, his tone erratic, swinging from forced politeness to accusations to veiled threats. One guy texted me directly, "Didn't know your old man was such a talker. Thought you handled all the real stuff." He was right, and now everyone was finally seeing the truth. Luke, of course, handled things in the most Luke way possible, with melodramatic social media posts. First, he posted a picture of the company van in the driveway with the caption, "When you give your whole life to something just to get blindsided," as if I hadn't kept him employed through every burnout, every screw-up, every failed job he'd had before the business. Then came the group messages from Aaron, soft, diplomatic, and drenched in guilt. "Hey, we know things are weird right now, but could you please help me cover tuition this one last time? Mom said we should all apologize. We didn't know your accident was serious." They didn't know? I had seen the video, the one Kyle told me about, the one Luke posted before deleting it. Aaron laughing in the car. "Well, she's in the hospital. What are we going to do? Sit around and cry?" Laughter filling the SUV. The same SUV they posted online as road trip with the real crew. They had known. They had just not cared. I never mentioned the video, never confronted them. I didn't need to. The truth sat inside me like a quiet, sharp stone. Every new message bounced off that stone without leaving a mark. Michelle tried next. She sent me screenshots of her overdue car lease, pretending it must have been a mistake with the bank. When that didn't get a response, she pivoted to emotional appeals. "We love you. We're all stressed. Just call us and we can fix this. Like always." Like always. No, not anymore. 3 days after the business freeze, my mom showed up. She didn't call ahead. She just buzzed my building at 8 p.m., holding a tin of food and a canvas bag filled with freezer meals, something she used to do for us as kids when Dad worked late. I debated not letting her in. I was tired, sore, and uninterested in another performance, but curiosity and something softer won. I buzzed her up. She stepped inside, set the food on the counter without a word, and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Not anger, not entitlement. Something like quiet confusion. "I didn't come to talk you into anything," she said softly. "I just didn't want your freezer to be empty." I didn't know what to say. We stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, she asked, "Are you going to leave us behind for good?" Her voice wasn't accusatory. It was small, almost frightened. "I already did," I said quietly. "You just didn't notice." She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly, like she'd expected the answer, but hoped it would hurt less when she heard it out loud. She left shortly after, and for a moment I genuinely thought that might be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, a letter arrived, an actual handwritten letter in an envelope with my name pressed neatly across the front. Inside was a note from my grandmother. "You've done the right thing, even if it feels heavy. I've watched this for years. I knew it would come to this. Just don't forget to leave space for peace when you're ready." Taped to the bottom was a check for $3,100. The exact amount they'd demanded from me for the cabin weekend. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't pity. It was her way of saying, "You don't owe them. They owe you, and I'm on your side." I didn't cash it. I still haven't. But I kept it, because for the first time, I wasn't alone in this. By the end of the second week, the messages slowed, the calls dwindled, the guilt softened into silence. At first, I thought it was a tactic, one of those rehearsed family silence periods meant to make me cave. But it wasn't. It was surrender. They had finally realized I wasn't coming back. Not to the role of fixer, not to the role of provider, not to the role of emotional punching bag disguised as a daughter. But they still didn't understand the full picture. Because I didn't just freeze the company, I rebuilt it. Quietly, carefully, strategically. I invited a handful of crew members, the ones who showed up, worked hard, and never expected shortcuts, and offered them contracts. Better ones. Ones I'd always hoped to give family but never could because they took advantage. I moved operations to a small office space, filed paperwork to change the business address, updated payroll access, cleaned the books, removed every trace of my family's financial dependence on the company. Work was slower now, but cleaner, honest, mine. Meanwhile, their lives were collapsing under the weight of responsibilities they had never learned to carry. Luke ended up taking the night shift at a fulfillment warehouse, telling people it was just temporary. I knew better. It was the job now. Erin withdrew from graduate school, writing a long social media post about a mental health break. One of her professors emailed me asking for a recommendation for her, not realizing what had happened. I didn't respond. Michelle quietly sold her car and moved back home with my parents, who pretended it was temporary too. The kind of temporary that lasts a year or two. Dad left several angry voicemails about the company before the anger faded into something more pitiful: confusion. He'd show up at job sites, trying to access files or direct crews, only to be told everything went through me now. Mom tried again once more, a quiet text one Sunday night at 9 p.m. Thinking of you. Dinner feels strange without you. Maybe come by soon? I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no longing, no grief. Just a strange stillness, like standing outside a house I once lived in and realizing I don't miss it at all. I didn't answer. The next morning, I booked a trip to Oregon, somewhere I'd always wanted to go, but never had time for because time was always spent fixing them. I rented a cabin, sat under the trees, breathed cold air, and let myself exist without obligation. Not as a provider, not as a crutch, not as the family bandage. Just as me. And for the first time, that was enough. I came back from Oregon feeling lighter. Not healed, not brand new, but steadier. More myself. My ribs still ached when I twisted too fast, and my wrists throbbed in cold weather. But the real wounds, the invisible ones, felt quieter. Like they were finally scabbing instead of bleeding. The silence from my family didn't scare me anymore. It felt earned, honest. A consequence rather than a punishment. But consequences tend to ripple, and theirs were only beginning to reach me. The first sign came through one of the drywall contractors I'd kept on. He sent me a voice message, laughing in disbelief. Your dad showed up at the site this morning yelling about access to the client files. Told the crew to ignore the restructure. They told him they only take directions from you now. He nearly lost it. I thanked him and went back to reviewing invoices. It didn't rattle me. Dad had always operated under the assumption that authority was inheritance. He never imagined that the business running smoothly all these years had nothing to do with him. The next sign came from Michelle. She called 3 times and left a voicemail sounding desperate, not angry. Marissa, a lot's happening. Mom and Dad aren't doing well. They're arguing all the time about the company and about you. Dad keeps saying you betrayed him. Mom keeps saying you were pushed too far. Erin and Luke won't stop fighting. It's bad. Please call me. I didn't. Not because I wanted them to suffer, though a part of me believed suffering was the only route to self-awareness, but because going back in now would undo everything. They needed to feel the weight of the emptiness I used to fill. Their next attempt was predictable. An extended family group chat pinged to life. Cousin Rebecca, we need to have a family talk. This is getting out of hand. Uncle Jeff, your dad is a wreck. Just hear him out. Aunt Mary, keep the business together. Family is everything. I ignored all of it. They weren't reaching out because they understood what they'd done. They were reaching out because I had finally stopped being useful. The illusion of unity dissolves fast when the provider walks away. By week 3, the unraveling had turned into something I hadn't expected. A split. Mom showed up at my door a second time. No food this time. No desperate tone. Just a quiet, tired look. The kind of look you see on someone who's been fighting battles they can't admit they created. Your father and I... She paused, voice cracking. We're separating. I blinked. She swallowed. We've been arguing since the accident. Everything came up. Everything we avoided. About the business. About you. About how we raised them. Your father thinks you betrayed us, but he never saw what we were asking of you. I did. I just pretended it was fine. Her shoulders slumped. I knew this day was coming. I just didn't know what would finally break it open. I didn't hug her. I didn't invite her in. But I didn't shut the door either. Are you okay? I asked quietly. She gave a sad smile. Maybe for the first time in years, I will be. Then she left. I closed the door slowly, leaning my head against it. I expected to feel anger, or relief, or triumph. Instead, all I felt was a strange, quiet mourning for something I never truly had. A real family. The next blow came not from my family, but from the company lawyer. He called to inform me that Dad had tried to dispute the LLC transfer from 5 years ago. The paperwork was airtight. My signature and his sat neatly side by side. The bank records backed it up. Legally, the lawyer said, the company belongs entirely to you. Your father doesn't have a case. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the wall for a long moment. Dad hadn't called me, hadn't shown up, hadn't apologized. He'd tried to take back the company from behind my back. It was confirmation, painful but necessary. He never wanted a daughter. He wanted a tool. Then came the final reveal, the one that changed the way I looked at my siblings forever. It started with a text from Kyle, my quiet cousin, who always stayed out of drama. Thought you should know this before you hear it from someone else. Attached was a video file. Not the one from the drive to the cabin. A different one. A clip from inside the cabin itself. My sisters, Erin and Michelle, sitting around a table with friends, laughing, talking about my accident as if it were some mildly inconvenient gossip. Michelle: honestly, she's always so dramatic. A car crash? She'll milk that for months. Erin: exactly. And she'll try to make us feel guilty. But we needed this weekend. A friend: wait, wasn't she alone in the hospital? Erin: she's fine. If it was serious, she would have made sure we knew. More laughter. Someone off-screen chimed in. Well, if she didn't get our text, I'm sure she got the Venmo request. Roaring laughter. I watched it 3 times. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. Their silence wasn't negligence. It was indifference. And their attempt to collect money from me while I lay bruised and bandaged wasn't obliviousness. It was entitlement. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. And resources don't need care. They just need to produce. That video was the final nail, the brutal clarity I didn't know I still needed. Not one of them deserved a place in my life. A week later, I finalized the restructuring. The company was mine, leaner, more efficient, and free of the dead weight that had dragged it down. I gave raises to the crew members who had supported me. I secured 2 new contracts. I stabilized the books. I breathed easier. My family, meanwhile, scattered like pieces of a shattered mirror. Dad moved into a small rental across town, pretending it was temporary. Mom stayed in the house, but stopped answering his calls. Michelle worked part-time at a bookstore to afford her loan payments. Erin moved in with a friend after withdrawing from grad school. Luke kept his night shift job and told people he was building a new path by choice. They never admitted what caused it. They never apologized. They never reflected. But they never reached out again, either. And strangely, that was the apology I needed. Stop! Part 5. The new life, the clean break, and the end of the safety net. By the time a month had passed, something in me had shifted so deeply I almost didn't recognize the woman I used to be. I woke up without checking my phone for emergencies. I went to work without worrying about whose bill I'd need to quietly cover. I returned home to silence that finally felt peaceful, not empty. I stopped flinching whenever an unknown number popped up. Most of them were spam. The few calls from extended family I ignored on instinct. They weren't reaching out for me. They wanted the version of me who fixed everything. And she didn't exist anymore. Daniel noticed the change too. My boyfriend had been patient through the entire unraveling, never pushing, never guilt-tripping, just offering steady care. One night he made dinner and said, "You seem lighter, like you're breathing deeper." "I am," I admitted, for the first time in years. He didn't pry. He didn't ask for details. That was the difference. He didn't love what I could do for him. He loved me, and for once I felt like I deserved that. Work became the place where I rebuilt myself brick by brick. The business thrived under the new structure. The small team I'd hired was competent, grateful, and loyal in a way my family never knew how to be. One afternoon, my lead foreman, Jace, stopped by my office. "You know," he said, leaning in the doorway, "the crew says morale's the best it's been in years. Just thought you should know." It hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so long carrying things for people who never acknowledged it that hearing simple, honest appreciation felt foreign, warm, something like healing. Finances settled. Contracts increased. The company's reputation improved now that chaos wasn't knocking over every structure I built. My life was finally mine. And then, as if the universe wanted to test my resolve, Mom sent another message. Not guilt, not anger, just a soft, simple text. Thinking of you. Hope you're taking care of yourself. I stared at it for a long time. There was no blame, no request. Just a sentence from a woman who was slowly waking up to the damage she allowed to grow in her house. But I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Some wounds don't heal by going back. They heal by staying gone. And for once, I trusted my instincts. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Grandma, the only consistent voice of care throughout everything. It read, "I'm proud of you, not for walking away, but for finally choosing yourself." Attached was a photo she'd taken years ago. Me at 12 years old, holding a toolbox half my size, standing beside Dad as he showed me how to replace a broken cabinet hinge. My smile was wide, naive, hopeful. A girl who believed she'd be valued for who she was, not for what she could fix. I looked at that girl for a long time. Then I whispered, "I'm sorry it took me so long." As the days stretched into weeks, the quiet wasn't unsettling anymore. It was grounding. I took morning walks, visited little cafes I'd never had time for, caught up on books collecting dust for years. I learned how to rest without guilt, how to say no without explanation, how to exist without being tethered by obligation. I even started planning something I'd avoided for years, a future that wasn't built around being needed. A vacation with Daniel, a new project at work, a life where my time belonged to me. One afternoon, while organizing my desk, I found the list I'd made the morning after the accident, the 2 columns that changed everything. I didn't feel anger reading it. I felt clarity. The left column, financial ties to people who never once checked on me, was a map of my old life. The right column, 3 names that reflected genuine care, was the map of who I should have been giving my heart to all along. I folded the list neatly, placed it in the drawer, and closed it gently. Not to hide it, but to acknowledge it. That list wasn't about money. It was a record of truth, and the truth had finally set me free. Months passed before the next and final shock arrived. Uncle Keith called, rare for him. His voice was gentle, cautious. "Your dad's been telling people you stole the business," he said, "but no one believes him. They all know who kept it running. We all saw it. We just never said anything." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't angry, just tired. "And your siblings?" I asked finally. He exhaled. "They're floundering. They don't say it out loud, but losing your support broke something in all of them." I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. "Let them figure it out," I said simply. He paused. "You're not coming back, are you?" "No," I said, "I'm not." "Good," he replied. "It's about time someone in this family chose themselves." I hung up and stared out the window, watching sunlight shift across the floorboards. My life before the crash felt like something that happened to another person, a woman stretched thin enough to snap, a woman who believed love was earned through sacrifice, a woman whose worth was measured in bank transfers and late-night rescues. That wasn't me anymore. The final message came months later, from Luke of all people. A single line. "You win." I stared at it for a long time, then finally typed back, "I wasn't playing." And I meant it. Because this wasn't victory. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was freedom. The life I built afterward wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful, honest, and entirely my own. I woke up each day knowing I owed nothing to people who had taken everything for granted. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the safety net anymore. I saw the woman who cut the ropes, the woman they never expected to walk away, the woman who finally saved herself.